With the busy fall season already in a swing, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for those jam-packed days. Well, Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up fast with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. These meals are great to help you nourish yourself well during your pregnancy, and they come in super handy in the postpartum period to free up your time and allow you to focus on what's most important, getting to know your sweet new baby and settling into motherhood. Listen, I have a family of snobby eaters, and all 4 of us loved these meals. We went with the vegetarian versions, and I'm not lying, every single one was delicious. So skip that extra trip to the grocery store, skip the chopping, the prepping, the cleaning up too, while you still get the flavor and nutritional quality you need. These fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes, so all you gotta do is heat it up and enjoy. Head to factormeals.com/Dr. Nicole 50 and use code Dr. Nicole 50 to get 50% off. That's code Dr. Nicole 50 at factormeals.com/Dr. Nicole 50 to get 50% off today. So what happens when the umbilical cord comes out first instead of the head? Welcome to the All About Pregnancy and Birth podcast. I'm Dr. Nicole Calloway Rankins, a board-certified OBGYN who's been in practice for nearly 15 years. I've had the privilege of helping over 1,000 babies into this world, and I'm here to help you be calm, confident, and empowered to have a beautiful pregnancy and birth. Quick note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Check out the full disclaimer at drnicolerankins.com/disclaimer. Now let's get to it. Hello there. Welcome to this short episode of the podcast. Whether you are a new listener or a returning listener, I'm so glad you're spending some of your time with me today. So in today's short episode of the podcast, I am doing a little story time, a day in the life of an OBGYN. That's me. And I'm going to share a story about umbilical cord prolapse. So here's what happened. I was walking down the hall, headed to a patient's room, and I heard at the front in the nursing station somebody say, "Call Dr. Rankins now." So I run down the hall. They tell me to run into a specific room. And when I walk into the room, I see a 7 to 8 inch loop of umbilical cord hanging out of the patient's vagina. Now, this is called an umbilical cord prolapse, and it is a true obstetric emergency. So what can happen in an umbilical cord prolapse is that the cord comes down and it can get squeezed and it can pretty quickly cut off blood supply to the baby. The umbilical cord is what connects the baby to the placenta and the mom to get all the nutrients and the oxygen and all of those things. And with that prolapse, it's at a high risk of being squeezed, getting cut off, the blood supply gets cut off, the oxygen gets cut off. It can cause a lot of damage and in extreme cases, death of a baby. Now, there are a couple of risk factors for umbilical cord prolapse. One is breech presentation, particularly footling breech presentation. Footling breech presentation is when the feet are coming first through the vagina instead of the head. So when the feet are coming first, there's a lot of space around it for the cord to kind of drop through. Whereas if the head is there, even if a butt is there, they kind of act like a plug and the cord can't come around that. But when the feet are there in a breech presentation, a footling breech, it does increase the possibility for an umbilical cord prolapse. The other thing that can increase the chances of an umbilical cord prolapse is polyhydramnios, which is extra amniotic fluid. And that can increase the chances because with that extra fluid, the baby has a lot of opportunity to move around. So as long as that fluid is there, the baby can flip, move in different positions. That cord can sneak down in front of the head and increase the chances of umbilical cord prolapse. Now, those two things are not necessarily in our control. There is another one that is in our control that increases the chances of umbilical cord prolapse, and that is artificially breaking someone's water when the baby's head isn't well applied to the cervix. So we don't want to break someone's water unless the head is nice and firmly snug on that cervix. And when we do break the water, then there's not a chance of the cord sneaking down in front of the head. Now, in this particular instance, she really had none of those risk factors. The head was down, had been well applied. She didn't have polyhydramnios. Her water had actually been broken for a while. So it wasn't that. In this particular instance, the nurse just went into the room to check because I can't, it's been a minute. I think she was trying to get the baby's heartbeat, and the baby's heartbeat was on the monitor or something like that. And she pulled the covers back and there was just a giant loop of cord hanging out. So it was completely out of nowhere. So even though there are some risk factors, there are occasions when it just sort of happens out of nowhere. I've seen it one other time where someone literally walked into the hospital with the loop of cord hanging out between their legs. That baby ended up doing fine. All of us OBGYNs recommend that you take a prenatal supplement during pregnancy and ideally at least 3 months before getting pregnant. But which product is right for you, and will it have all of the nutrients you need for every stage of your journey? Choosing a prenatal can be so confusing, and that is why I am delighted to tell you about Element, which takes all the stress out of the process. Element is the first ever personalized prenatal supplement. It's designed by maternal fetal medicine doctors and is not only customized for each person, but it also changes over time for each stage of your journey from preconception to postpartum. Element provides a tailored prenatal supplement whether you have certain dietary preferences or a high-risk pregnancy or nutritional deficiencies like low iron or vitamin D. And every 30 days, they can adjust your prenatal protocol to make sure it is the perfect fit for you. Also, Element has exceptional ingredient quality, no fillers, no additives, and the packaging is eco-friendly too. Every pregnancy is unique, and your prenatal should be too. So visit helloelement.com. That's Element with 2 L's, and use the code Dr. Nicole to get 20% off your first order today. Now, what do we do when we see an umbilical cord prolapse? Well, most of the time, an umbilical cord prolapse requires a stat cesarean section. When you hear people say they had an emergency C-section, they are often talking about, I had an urgent C-section. You know, they said I needed a C-section and 20, 30 minutes later, I had a C-section. No. That ain't what I'm talking about here. That's not really a true emergency C-section. A true emergency C-section is what happens in an umbilical cord prolapse. You will immediately see multiple people come into the room. One person will hold the baby's head up. So what we try to do is someone keeps their hand in your vagina to try to elevate the baby's head off of the cord or elevate the fetal part off of the cord so the blood can flow through the cord. So somebody hops in the bed with you, stays in the bed, keeps their hand in your vagina while you're going to the OR. We are ripping the cords out of the wall. We're running down the hall, calling everybody. This is a true emergency situation because we have to get the baby delivered quickly because, again, it can cut off blood supply to the baby and the baby, in the worst case, could die. So in this particular instance, I checked this patient's cervix and she was 8 centimeters and her cervix was very stretchy. She had had babies before, so I could stretch it back around the head. So I stretched her cervix to completely dilate it, and the baby's head was pretty low. And in this case, I actually applied a vacuum. A vacuum is a device that we can use to help facilitate delivery. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a small suction cup that is applied to the baby's head. It gives some extra oomph to while the mom still pushes. And then I asked that mama to push with everything she had, and she did. And 3 pulls of the vacuum, out came a very vigorous, screaming baby boy. Now, people ask me after this happened, like, what led me to do a vacuum instead of running back for a cesarean section? Well, in this particular case, like I said, she'd had babies before. She was completely dilated, and I'm doing the thought process in my head of, okay, we get back to the OR, We have to get prepared for a C-section. She would have had to go to sleep because she didn't have an epidural. We have to get all the things. That's going to take another 5 to 6 minutes to get all those things done. So it was worth it to me to try, and worth it not just to me, but to in the best interest of the patient, to see if we could facilitate birth quickly at the bedside. And that's what happened. And I also believe, this is like another aside, I work from a place of, I'm not one of those religious people. Like, I don't believe in any particular religion, but I'm certainly a spiritual person. I believe in God, a higher power, things that guide us and can lead us and show us the way in things. One of the things that I pray before I go into work every shift is that God uses me to care for the people that I'm privileged to take care of. And so I believe that those things, those guidance, that voice to do things in a specific way comes from a higher power. So that is my story about umbilical cord prolapse. Now, before we wrap up, quick reminder, if you haven't already heard, my birth plan class is now free. It is a lovely recording that you can watch whenever you want to. You have access to it right after you sign up. This is a great class to take to help you make a birth plan that's actually going to work, to help you have the birth you want. Templates and forms don't cut it, because those templates and forms don't actually convey whether or not your doctor and hospital support what's in that birth plan. It's too late to show up to the hospital with that piece of paper and think that this is going to suffice. Because what if they don't actually support that? Then you're stuck. You're in labor. You can't leave the hospital at that point. So really making a birth plan should be about having that discussion ahead of time so that you know well in advance and you can talk about it under calm circumstances and make changes to your approach to birth if need be, based on how those discussions happen during the prenatal period. And that's what I teach you in the class, how to have those discussions during the prenatal period. So check out the birth plan class. It's drnicolerinkins.com/birth plan. You will not regret it. Okay, so there you have it. Do me a favor, share this podcast with a friend. Sharing is caring. Also subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to me right now. I'd love to hear what you think about the show. If you like it, then please leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or shoot me a DM on Instagram at Dr. Nicole Rinkins and let me know what you think there. So that's it for this short episode. Do come on back next week. And remember that you deserve a beautiful pregnancy and birth.